Wow. That's the word. That's the best word to describe the great season Josh Bell is having. That's the word Pirate fans are saying or probably shouting as they watch the ball rocket off the bat of Josh Bell into the stands or even into the river. But, and there is a but, that does not mean he got robbed out of starting for the National League in the All-Star Game. That does not mean Freddie Freeman is not the most deserving first baseman to start for the National League in the All-Star Game. Taking nothing away from the great, wow, jaw-dropping season Josh Bell is having, but it doesn't mean that at all. This is another edition of Mic Drop here on Pittsburgh Sports Live. I am your host, Mike Asti, coming at you from up above Market Square here in downtown Pittsburgh. And again, Josh Bell is having a tremendous season. Josh Bell is having such a great year that I've argued and will continue to argue he would gain MVP votes and probably is going to lose MVP votes because the Pirates aren't a true contender. And I'm going to leave that argument for another day for any of you that want to drop into the comments that they are a contender. I get they're on a winning tear. I get some maybe turning point games in there, even though I got some flack for arguing against it, that they're just any other games. The win against the Padres on the controversial call and having to come back. Padres aren't that good either. Those games are going to happen through a long season for any team, especially an average team like Pittsburgh. And even the 18 runs, 3-homer game that you're talking about, comparisons to Willie Stargell and historic nights like that for Josh Bell. Great for him. He's having a great year, an MVP caliber year. But the pitching staff's been holding this team back, and I don't believe they're a contender. I don't believe they make the playoffs. I think there's more losing streaks to come, while there may also be winning streaks. It's that roller coaster of a ride type of season. They're an average club. But I'll leave that alone for the purpose of this, and just to say that he's having an MVP quality year. Josh Bell is having an MVP type season for what he's doing for the Pirates. They wouldn't even be close to this race. I don't think they're a contender, but they're not in last any longer. They're not far from first necessarily. They're within flirting distance of a wild card in a postseason chance. They're not out of the race just yet. Why? Because of Josh Bell, for sure. And here are the numbers. I mean, it's clear. 25 homers, and this, by the way, a caveat that's needed, one of my favorite words out there too. This is as I'm recording now. He could be sending a ball into the river while you're watching, while I'm even recording this. So Josh Bell has been that heroic this year. This all can change. But as we stand now, 25 homers, 77 RBI, a 308 batting average, 381 OBP. These are important. 381 OBP, a 654. Hear me, read my lips. Well, I have the graphic up, so hear me and read my lips later as I'll repeat this. 654, a 654 slugging percentage for Josh Bell. That's great. The Hall of Famers who've had great historic seasons, Hall of Famers who've had great slugging seasons, put up slugs like that in those individual campaigns. Some of which not even that good. Just saying. 300 plus at bats he's doing this in right now, 318, 65 runs scored, 98 hits. And if you look at last year, take a little gander to last year as I leave this graphic up for another second or two. 25 homers right now, 12 all of last season. And it wasn't as if he only had 300 at bats last season, or 200 at bats, or even 400 at bats. A 500 at bat season resulted in only 12 home runs. 26 the year before, so one more dinger and he ties his single season high for his career. And remember, he came into the Pirates, he came into Major League Baseball, he came out of the draft with Scott Boras as his agent under tons of hype. Tons of hype. Many thought he would be the guy that would save the Pirate franchise, would take them from the McCutchen, Garrett Cole era of those 3 playoff appearances, the wild cards that didn't go anywhere, to the next level, to the next generation along with Marte and a few others. But it was a few years where it was kind of a lull. It was kind of him maybe not living up to that hype. Had some slugging numbers a couple years ago, but last year 12 homers, 62 RBI, 500 at-bats, hitting around 260 some. No. I mean, that's not most of the year. That's not a quality season for a guy with that much hype, especially a few years into his career in Major League Baseball. And then all of a sudden to do this, I didn't expect it. I don't know how many of you thought this would happen, but I'll admit I'm certainly surprised. I doubt many predicted this great of a year, an MVP caliber year for Bell, even if they thought much more could come compared to last year. But already having a better year than last year. He could stop now, get hurt now, never play another game the rest of the year. This is already, with 200 less at-bats, a better year than all of last season, which wasn't as if he got hurt. He played a 500 at-bat season. It's enough body work to judge you. 12 homers, 62 RBI, 131 hits, so only a little over 30 more than he already has right now at 98. The average wasn't there, hovering around 250 most of the season. Slug, a little over 400. An OBP, over 300 some, but not close to where it is now even. 381 OBP, 654 slug. 654 slug. Right there, those are amazing numbers. But again, it doesn't mean he's a perfect player. It means he's becoming an all-star. He's maybe even becoming a perennial all-star. And I touched on this on a past show that he's not going to sign any extension right now. The Pirates absolutely should offer it to him. They should try to lock him up right now. But Scott Boras being his agent, they were lucky to even sign him out of the draft with that hype. He's going to go to the end of a contract. He's going to go into free agency. He's going to exhaust everything he can and then get as much money as he can from it either being the Pirates or somewhere else, and probably somewhere else in some other big market. That's reality. That's the life of a Pirates fan. That's reality. So you can sip on some tea for that show and take all that in, drink all that in. A few shows back in the mix of all my Steelers content there with Mike Drop and some of the Steelers live chats. Mostly, obviously, this is mostly Steelers shows from me as I'm helping to run Steelers Now and going to be credentialed with the team, and we're going toward training camp and covering the regular season. But as we get some Pirates content here on the channel, it's about what news is relevant right now. Dan's been covering the Phil Kessel trade and the Pens free agency. So I'm taking this on. And I'm going to give you the truth serum that maybe some of these fans need, because as many of you are shocked that how could a guy with 25 homers, almost 80 RBI, whether you like RBI or not, it's certainly an overrated stat, but it's there for him too, a 300-plus batting average, a 654 slug, a 381 OBP. How could that guy not be starting for the National League in the All-Star Game at first base? And then I'm going to hear, and it's not to say this is a wrong opinion in terms of usually or historically with fans and fan votes, normally the fans don't know what they're doing. I mean, this isn't any of you. This even includes me when I was a fan before I was working in media. I mean, this is just in general. Usually the fans get all-star votes wrong. Usually they get Pro Bowl votes wrong. They get all-star votes wrong. No matter what the sport is, they get it wrong. Usually it's a popularity contest. Usually it's just about guys they know. It's more name recognition, that if a guy that they know who normally is good is having somewhat of a semblance of an okay season, they'll keep voting him even if somebody else is having a better year in that given season. Because the All-Star Game, All-Star votes, is not supposed to be about a career achievement award. And sometimes you have those, Cal Ripken getting in his last season and the Gopher Ball home run. Okay, that's fine. Dwayne Wade making it for the NBA his last season when he's announced it prior. Okay, that's fine. Even for Derek Jeter, I get it in those final scenarios, even though it sucks for the guy that having an all-star season who may or may not lose out because somebody else has to get the nod for the career achievement honor. Dirk Nowitzki, too, in the NBA. But outside of that, the fans have got it wrong tons of times. There were years where Derek Jeter wasn't having the best season for a shortstop at all, by any means, and he was getting the most votes. There were years where he was getting more votes as a shortstop for the Yankees, of course. Yankees winning championships, the big market that they are, evil empire, one of the most known sports franchise brands in the world, historically, and still. Over A-Rod, who was having some of the best single season for a shortstop ever in the league and was a better overall player, and this is prior to knowing about steroids, and this is back from the Mariners and even the Texas Ranger days before they were teammates and he was playing short. That's crazy. That was the fans throwing it to the Yankee, or the Yankee fans coming out in full force and voting more. There were years, despite him being my favorite player, and I went to see him get inducted into Cooperstown, and my favorite player growing up, Ken Griffey Jr., he suffered a myriad of injuries that cost him probably 5 full seasons, and he was a legend with those numbers, but even more, and more of a legendary career, and maybe even setting some of those records. Certainly the all-time home run record he would have had a shot at, even with all the injuries, if he would have played a few more years in terms of overall time missed that he had throughout his career. But some of those years where he was injured, you knew he was injured and going to miss the rest of the season a month in. Some of those seasons, one of them in particular, the year he hit 500 home runs, 2004, I believe, you knew he was going to miss the rest of the year. He ended up suffering a season-ending injury at the end of May, early June. And he still got the most votes to start for the National League in the All-Star Game. I mean, you knew he wasn't going to play. You knew he was going to be out for the year. And even while he was playing to that point, it was a solid year for him. I think he had 20 home runs to finish it out, 20 homers, 60 RBI. But he wasn't having a normal Griffey year for a Hall of Famer. It was a little bit down from his normal level when he played a full season. He didn't deserve to be the starter there. There were other outfielders, especially at center, that could have got it over him, especially when you know he's already out for the year and not going to play anyway. But fans knew Griffey. They loved Griffey. They went in the 90s when he was the best player in the game and punched that little paper ballot for him. So that was a fan recognition vote, a popular player vote. They voted the popular guy that they love over really conventional wisdom over who was having the better year, who's actually going to play in the game, who's going to help your team the most in the game for your league. The fans and I group myself in here when I was a fan, or I was just a fan, they don't know what they're doing with votes. It's a popularity contest. It's hard to even argue that point now. I mean, really, it's almost a fact. But this is one of those rare instances the fans actually got it right, and maybe accidentally so. I know Pirate fans, and not even just fans, but colleagues, and certainly well-respected colleagues. Here's one from one of the godfathers of Pittsburgh media, Bob Pompiani. Freddie Freeman just barely edges out Josh Bell for starter position in All-Star Game. It should have never come down to a second vote. Bell deserved it. I actually went back and forth with Pomp on this. That's another one. Players who would have started the All-Star Game if the players voted determined. That would have been Mookie Betts and Josh Bell. So apparently the players would have thrown Bell in there, which maybe means the players would have messed this up too, because I think, again, the fans weirdly got it right this time. But here's my response to Pomp. As much respect for Pomp, again, that I do have. As much as Bell deserved the honor, and it would have been cool for Pittsburgh and Pirates, let's not act like Freeman isn't also deserving and actually the better all-around player. Now that tweet right there brought me the heat. That brought me the animosity. That brought me the venom from Pirate fans that I received when I said that win against San Diego wouldn't mean they're going to the playoffs and wouldn't be this staple win. It would be part of the roller coaster ride. I'll be proven right about that, regardless of what's happening recently against other quality teams or better teams. It'll go up and down. They won't be in the postseason. And that'll hurt Bell in terms of MVP votes. He's having an MVP type of season. But Freddie Freeman's the deserving starter for the All-Star Game. Is not to say Freddie Freeman's not having an MVP type of season as well. And look at Freddie Freeman's numbers. Okay, Freddie Freeman, first of all, has been in the league much longer, and it's very, very surprising this is his first All-Star Game. But it is. He's now finally becoming the star that he wasn't years ago. Long tenure with Atlanta. Now, I understand Bell has some of these offensive numbers, but Bell, 25 homers, 77 RBI, hitting .308. That was Bell. You go to the slug at 654. That's incredible. The OBP of .381. Let's go Freeman here, though. No slouch either. Freeman, 22 homers, 65 RBI. I understand both of those two are lower than Bell. .312 batting average, so now we're getting higher than Bell. We're getting closer to my argument here. Now we're getting higher than Bell. .399 OBP, that's better than Bell. Bell at .381. The OBP matters, folks. That's getting on base, helping your team on base. It's not just about driving them home. RBI is an overrated stat. It's about, this is where analytics are coming in. This might be an analytic vote. Maybe the younger generation got Freeman in because I would say Josh Bell is probably more of a known casual fan star player at least. He's more the millennial. He's younger. Freeman's been around a while and wasn't a star for so long. People probably would forget and underrate how well he's playing now, which I think is part of how this argument is going on. Why fans are upset, not even just Pirate fans, saying Josh Bell got robbed with the great MVP caliber season he's having, historic season, where you're bringing up Willie Stargell for historic comparisons. You're hearing the name Hank Aaron brought up for extra base hits to this point in a year. But that doesn't mean Freeman's not the most deserving. Freeman, now a worse slug at 592, but that's nothing to sneeze at. Bell's is that incredible, but that's nothing to sneeze at. So that's the offensive stats there. They're very, very close. And again, Freeman, 22 homers, 65 RBI, both lower than Bell. Bell a little bit more pop in his bat. Freeman better career-wise, obviously, but Bell could be better as we keep going. 312 batting average, that is better than Bell. 399 OBP, that is better than Bell, and a worse slug. So I get it. You would just see the stats right there, and you might be watching this show thinking to yourself, well, Mike, I'm not saying you don't know what you're talking about because you're articulating it, but you're telling me, and the numbers that you're pulling are actually still supporting my argument that Bell should have been the starter, because you're telling me that there's less homers, less RBI, and many of you may still go off those stats only, even though, again, they're a little bit overrated stats, and anyone who maybe even is more obsessed with analytics and uses them even more than I do as I try to kind of mix everything. There's not a be-all, end-all at anything, but this is kind of an analytical argument in terms of what stats are being used to evaluate either player. Freeman, more of the analytical love affair stats of the OBP, of the slug, of those type of numbers, not caring about RBI as much, runs scored, getting on base, and then doing it there, even average. Whereas Bell is that old school homer, RBI, but the average and slug, that's there too. The average and slug is there too. OBP is great too, but Freeman's is better. Point of it is, the offensive stats are relatively even. It's not a situation where you could be mad at either guy offensively. Some are more of an analytic season for Freeman, even though he also has pop in his bat. He can give it to all of you. All the baseball fans are going to say he's having a good year. No one's going to dispute Freeman saying he's not having a quality season as well. Maybe an MVP caliber year for the Braves, a contending team. Nor even Bell. I don't think even Braves fans would knock Josh Bell and say that Josh Bell is having a bad year. Or again, I opened the show with, wow, that's the type of year Josh Bell is having. It's an historically great season for the Pirates franchise, an incredible comparison to what he did last year, or really what he did not do. But it's not just about that for the starting spot in the National League. It's not just about the offensive numbers when evaluating a player in terms of who's better, who's having a better year, and who's most deserving of some award or an all-star spot. Because it's not just about offense in sports, not in baseball either. There's two sides to this coin. And it's offense and then the part of the game that everyone forgets and nobody wants to bring up and everyone kind of doesn't use as a barometer, especially in baseball a lot of the time, because they just see the stats and are obsessed with numbers. And I myself memorize certain numbers for guys' careers, certain legends. I know exactly what they put forth in terms of homer, RBI, average, runs scored, hits. I get it. Benchmark, 500 homers, 3,000 hits. I hear you. But that doesn't mean that that's all there is. It's part of why I believe Willie Mays, regardless of Bonds on steroids, and certainly Bonds on steroids maybe was the best ever, inflating his numbers a little bit, and he was great prior to roids too. So he was one of the best players in baseball history, a legend of the game. But defensively, even prior to steroids, when he was winning left field Gold Gloves, he didn't win as many as Willie Mays. He wasn't as great as Willie Mays overall as an outfielder. Neither even Griffey at that point defensively. But Bonds, one of the best players ever. But defensively, Willie Mays, maybe the best defensive player of all time, along with DiMaggio in terms of the outfield. Roberto Clemente, too, for Pirate fans. Roberto Clemente, all those Gold Gloves, most Gold Gloves. Certainly one of the better outfielders of all time in terms of defensive players. Overall, all-around players. Roberto Clemente, 3,000 hits, the average, as well as the Gold Glove. So an all-around key player. But it's, again, why Willie Mays for me is the greatest baseball player of all time, why he is the GOAT. Why Willie Mays, for me, regardless of Bonds on steroids, regardless of what Griffey would have been if he didn't get hurt, and even a legend that he was, regardless of everybody else through baseball history, even Babe Ruth, and I know he did it as a pitcher as well. Ty Cobb, Mickey Mantle. I mean, the list can go on in terms of the legend of the game. And by no means was that a ranking process. If you want to actually hear that, I can tweet you or send you an email. You don't want that on this show, probably. It's not entertaining enough. But point of it is, Willie Mays for me is the greatest baseball player of all time. Not just because he has the offensive numbers and one of the greatest offensive players of all time, but he was a complete player. He was a great defensive player, maybe even a better defensive player than he was offensively. It's why that I say Mike Trout is maybe going to go down as the greatest baseball player of all time. Mike Trout got the most votes here, and he again deserved it, finally getting his due All-Star Game-wise, even if he doesn't maybe get the love overall in terms of evaluation or endorsement-wise that, say, Bryce Harper does and not even close to as good as him. But Mike Trout is doing it all in terms of runs scored, average, slug, OBP, hits. There are even some RBI there. Defense, overall ability, as a Gold Glover, multiple-time MVP. Mike Trout is a five-tool complete player and then some. Mike Trout's the greatest baseball player in the game right now, having a start to his career that maybe is the greatest in baseball history. Yes, I said it. Look it up. Compare it. That's true. By far the best in the game. Deserves every bit of that contract with how high baseball's money is spiking. If anyone was going to get that, it had to be him. And if he keeps this up, will go down as maybe the best ever. Overall complete player, not just for his offensive stats, stolen bases, got to throw those in, but overall complete game, including the defense. But that's what's being forgotten here in evaluating the first base spot for the National League in the All-Star Game. Maybe it's just Pirate fans being clouded by it's a Pirate having a great season, it's historic, we got to have him be our All-Star starter. And it would have been a wonderful thing for Pittsburgh. It would have been really, really cool for the Pirates, regardless of whether they get in the playoffs or not, or what type of the year the team has, to have an all-star starter in the All-Star Game. Not just a legitimate all-star like a McCutchen or whoever, Jason Bay back in the Home Run Derby. And I know there's been Jason Bay and McCutchen, and there's been guys who have been in the Home Run Derby, and that was cool then. Jason Bay throwing up the goose egg wasn't as cool, but they've had their time in the sun to represent the Pirates and represent Pittsburgh. There's been players for the Pirates to do that, win or lose. And Josh Bell's going to probably, maybe even he could win a home run derby. That wouldn't surprise me at all with the pop in his bat and how well he's hitting the ball out of the ballpark right now. But to be a starter in the All-Star Game would have even been cooler. I mean, that would have been historic so far. That would have been really, really cool for the Pirates and for Pittsburgh. And that would have maybe helped him get the limelight, helped him get even more MVP votes, helped them pay more attention to the team. He'd get the PA introduction to start the game. The casual fan maybe would hear his name. Maybe they're not going to watch the whole game to see when he gets in. It would have been amazing. But Pirates fans claiming that they got screwed, or that it's unfair, or that, oh, this is a Pittsburgh bias against the Pirates somehow because they're a small market. None of that's true. There's been small market players that have started in all-star games that are stars even if they're on a small market team. There's been small market teams that have won championships or won pennants even though they're in a small market. The small market thing, yeah, it's relevant in some capacity. It's certainly tougher and you can take less risks. But that thing got to eventually die. It can't just be because they're a small market for the excuse of everything and that they got screwed for this and got screwed for that because, oh no, they're in a small market. It's not just that. Yes, they're going to put the Yankees and Red Sox on national TV constantly, and that's very, very annoying. I'd love to see Trout on sometimes, or more often than he is. But that's not why Bell is not starting in the All-Star game. And the fans often get it wrong. They, as I said earlier, I mean, they normally just vote the most popular player that they know. They've done it throughout all sports, throughout history of the fan vote. But this one, maybe it's accidental. They got it right. The numbers offensively are even, but Freddie Freeman's the much better defensive player. He's the much better defensive first baseman, as I just got done saying, is not just about offensive numbers. If it were, for Mike Trout wouldn't be the best player in baseball. If it were, then yes, Josh Bell should be the All-Star Game starter. Even though the OBP is better for Freeman, then I could see more of the Bell argument. Okay? If it was just about the offensive numbers. The slug is there. It makes up for the OBP, which is close. The better numbers overall otherwise, even though the average is a little bit lower. I could see Bell then. I would then vote for Bell. And it's still very, very close offensive-wise. numbers-wise. Freeman, better OBP, a worse slug, better average, less homers, less RBI. Okay? Relatively even across the board for the two of them in terms of offensive stats. But Freeman is the better defensive player. So that's the tiebreaker. If you have two guys who are very, very close offensively in terms of numbers, what's the tiebreaker? It's a no-brainer here, guys, in any sport. Defense, the other side of the game. Freeman is the better overall first baseman, and yes, he's older and his career might not be better, but as we stand right now in terms of who's having a better season, who's better right now for his team, he should get MVP votes for the Braves being contender and what he's doing on his team, without tons of other stars over there. Just the same as Josh Bell doing the same for the Pirates, and I'm in the Pirates vortex, so I see more of Bell and know more of Bell and hear more of the Bell clamoring, but Freeman's getting underrated this year, maybe because of what Bell's doing. So if he finally got his due by the rest of Major League Baseball, the rest of baseball fans, then can you be that upset? He's actually the better overall first baseman. He's actually the better overall player based on what he's doing so far this year. Their offensive numbers are even, relatively even. It's pretty damn close. It is. Again, better OBP for Freeman, more of an analytic type season. Close in terms of the homer and RBIs for everybody. Bell, a much better slugging percentage. Better other conventional power numbers. Good OBP, good average, but Freeman better in those two categories. By the way, also Freeman a little better in terms of WAR, a few points higher in terms of WAR than Bell. So he's having a better wins above replacement season, which is the barometer for the overall estimation of the year. If you compare everything, that's kind of, any analytic novices out there, that's kind of what you can tell to evaluate the full season, the WAR. Freeman's is better because his fielding percentage, because of the errors or lack thereof for him that he has not committed. The better overall first baseman is Freddie Freeman. And that's helping your team. I mean, Josh Bell at times has committed an error or not played well at first base or had some defensive lapse, maybe more last year, but still hurt the team and have that cost them a run or two, maybe even a game or two. I could find this if I go back, I'm sure. I don't want to be here all night, though. Freddie Freeman's done that less of the time. And that's just off the percentages by him being a better defensive player to this point. Maybe it'll change the rest of the year, but there's been years where the MVP of the end of the season didn't even make an all-star team or become the starter. So this is just where we are now. And as we are now, Freddie Freeman's the better overall first baseman. Freddie Freeman deserves to start for the National League in the All-Star Game. Freddie Freeman has close offensive numbers to Josh Bell in many categories, better in some others. Their offensive numbers are really even, mostly across the board. They're pretty damn close. But the defense then gives Freeman the bump. Freeman then is the better overall first baseman because of the defense added into the offense. And that, to me, means the fans got this right. They mess up a lot. The fan vote is mostly a popularity contest. I actually would be cool with this. Taking away the fan vote in terms of all-star starters. Just give it to maybe coaches, players. Granted, the players would have put Bell in. I did show you that from Jason Stark. There's Palm's tweet, and then there it is. Mookie Betts and Josh Bell would have been the stars if it came down to the players. That's interesting, but the players don't always evaluate everything evenly either. A lot of the time they're in the game, but it takes people paying more attention than they are because they're just worrying about themselves to truly evaluate the game properly. And I got to say, Freddie Freeman deserves the nod. I wish it was Bell. I think it would be great for the city of Pittsburgh. It would be great for the Pirates franchise from where they've been the last 20-plus years. But Josh Bell will make it up too in terms of the home run derby. I mean, for my money, he's probably going to win the home run derby. You're going to see more of those heroics that we see at PNC Park in the home run derby. He's going to mash the ball, and you'll see the ball rocket off his bat in the home run derby. So you'll see that's going to be it. I mean, Josh Bell will maybe get the home run derby honors to kind of make up for this. He'll still get in that All-Star game. He'll still perform well. Maybe he could even be All-Star game MVP with the home run derby honors. Maybe he could somehow bring it together and salvage the whole thing for Pirate fans. Regardless, him being there is wonderful. He's probably going to lose out on some MVP votes that he should otherwise get because this team won't make the playoffs. And how well he's playing to this point is why they're even close to contention. Otherwise, they'd be well out of the race with how weak their pitching staff has been. He's carried them through some games offensively. Him and Newman as well, another surprise. But Fred, it does not mean that the All-Star Game vote was wrong or it was a robbing or anyone got screwed or it's unfair. Freddie Freeman deserves the nod to start for the National League All-Star Game. Their numbers are close overall, and he's actually the better defensive player, which, oddly enough, is part of the game. It counts. He's the better offensive player. He's the better overall player, even if you think Bell is better offensively, and they're close, really, overall. That's going to do it for this one. I brought the little picture there of PNC Park onto the desk. That's from the inaugural game at PNC Park. Amazing enough, that was back 2001, 18 years ago. Unbelievable. Little baseball out here. This ball here, Bell, one of those that he's putting into the river and will send to the stands for the home run derby. I'm going to say it right now, Bell will win the home run derby. So that'll make Pirate fans upset at me for this show if they somehow watched all the way through and heard my takes on why Freeman deserves the nod for the first base spot for the All-Star Game of the National League and how he's the better overall player thanks to defense coupled with his offense and how close they are offensively. Then you'll be happy to know I'm going to pick Bell to win the home run derby. So Bell wins the home run derby. Nobody will care about anything else, whether he started or didn't start. It would have been great, but nobody got screwed. Freeman's actually the better overall first baseman and actually deserves the honor. So I just had to get that off my chest here. There was a little bit of a dip in terms of Steeler news this week. We still have a lot going on SteelersNow.com in terms of interview that Ron Lippick did with Rocky Bleier, who we're going to do some work in the future as well with, former Steelers legend, former Steelers Super Bowl champion, Rocky Bleier. That little interview they did, it's doing well on the site and very interesting on his thoughts on today's NFL. Today's NFL and the Steelers offseason, the drama, all that's brought up, but also a new book that he's promoting. And covering it all the way to training camp. Alan and I are then going to have the coverage of training camp and then beyond into the season, the games. We're going to give you a full-fledged Steelers credentialed season for SteelersNow.com, a part of this conglomerate of an outlet. Want to make sure you hit up PittsburghSportsNow.com, PittsburghHockeyNow.com, PittsburghSoccerNow.com even, where this show lives, the site that I run, PGHSportsLive.com, where all of the content on the channel ends up living their archive until I take it off. Or at least what I want to put up on that site. And then, of course, another site that I'm heavily involved in, help run, and a manager of, SteelersNow.com. SteelersNow.com, main site. Most of these shows, especially as we get towards Steelers season, into camp, I'm going to try to give you at least one recorded show on the news, then do some live chats. I've done recent live chats the last few weeks. But whatever the news of the day, I'm also going to cover, whether it be Penguins, Pirates, Steelers, College, Pitt, Penn State, WVU, whatever it is. And Dan already covered all the Penguin stuff with the Phil Kessel trade and all the free agency for Pittsburgh. So had to tackle this right now. There's a little bit of a dip in Steelers news, a little bit of a lull in Steelers news, which is going to happen right now and only didn't happen last year and the year before when I was covering for the Trib because of all the drama going on with the Steelers. That drama, at least they hope, is behind them, and we'll see who shows up in a helicopter come training camp. But that's not too far away as we're getting towards 4th of July, Independence Day, end of the month, Steelers training camp, and then on preseason, regular season. Hit up SteelersNow.com in particular. But also, while I'm here, I want to make sure you click on the subscribe button. Click on the subscribe button here for Pittsburgh Sports Live. Make it easier for us to get the content to you here on the channel. Free to do so. Helps us with sponsors. Helps us make some money elsewhere, but doesn't cost you a thing. There it is, Pittsburgh Sports Live on YouTube to search. And you can also find us at PGH Sports Live on Twitter, at PGH Sports Live on Twitter. You can find myself at Mike Asti 11 on Twitter, at Mike Asti 11 on Twitter. And I'm sure you'll bring me the critiques and maybe slide in my DMs with the hate based on this show, especially if you're a Pirate fan. But I'm not hating on Bell by any means. He's having a great, wow, jaw-dropping season, MVP caliber season, an historic season in the annals and first base history for the Pirate franchise. But Freeman's having a better one. Better overall player, better defensive player. The numbers offensively are pretty close. Freeman deserves an nod. I'm happy for him in a way, but not going to mind seeing Bell there in the All-Star Game, either the Midsummer Classic and knocking those balls out of the park for the All-Star Game home run derby that, again, I am predicting him to win. More of these shows. I might even give you Pirates and Steelers. Maybe do one of these in a Steelers live chat. Spirit's going to move me. We'll see how I do things. But Don't think if you're a Steelers fan who normally hits this up because of the Steelers live chats, because we get a lot of activity recently, that this is now Pirates programming. We're going to do some Pirate shows if they're in the news, but it's mostly Steelers shows here with Mic Drop. Tons of content, SteelersNow.com, as well as in the channel here, and also more Steelers live chat shows to come. So all that is to come. But another one of those examples why people just love to complain and find something to complain about, but when you actually get down to it in the nitty-gritty and evaluate, you really maybe aren't valid in what you're trying to complain about. But wouldn't be Pittsburgh, wouldn't be the Pittsburgh fan if there wasn't something to complain about and if they didn't feel slighted in some way.